day, everybody. Today I'm going to talk to you about delivering an agile project to a fixed budget. All right, a little bit about myself. My name is Julie. I work as a project manager, business analyst, and certified Scrum Master at Salsa Digital. For those of you who are not familiar with Salsa, we're a digital agency based out of Melbourne, and we're also the provider of GovCMS. I have been working in the IT industry for about 10 years now in various positions and also various industries, including business travel, software as a service, digital marketing, e-commerce, and I've now been delivering Drupal projects for about a year and a half. Change has always been my friend personally. As I've just said, I've changed industries, I've changed positions. I've even lived in 6 countries during my short life, and I've always felt that there are opportunities in change. You can only take them up if you're open to change and ready to do something new. So I feel like we should be delivering projects in an agile way, which is why this topic really resonates with me. All right. So today I will briefly go into the principles of agile development just for some context, talk about agile development and RFQs and why they don't necessarily go hand in hand that well together all the time, how you can then start an agile project on the right foot and run it through agile till the end, and I'll finally sum it up with some key lessons that I've learned throughout my time of running agile projects. And then you'll have a chance to ask me some questions. Before I get into this, I'm just kind of curious about who I've got here in this audience. Who in here are developers? All right. Oh, yeah, cool. Project managers. All right, good mix. And anybody in sort of the leadership team? All right. Wonderful. All right, that makes it easy. Right. So, principles of Agile. A lot of you might be familiar with the Agile Manifesto. If you've ever gone to a Scrum training, you would have come across it. Essentially, it's the core principle of what Agile is about, and it goes like this: individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiations, and finally responding to change over following a plan. Now, mind you that all the stuff you see in red, it's still important and we can't just neglect that entirely, but when you run a project agile, the things on the left should be more in focus. However, RFQs. Anybody who's worked on an RFQ before would know that usually an RFQ response will ask for a very detailed plan with comprehensive documentation of that plan, a fixed price and a fixed scope. Very intense contract negotiations if it's a larger project, and you're usually also asked to already outline your processes and tools in detail as well. So really everything that Agile is not asking for. What would an RFQ look like in a perfectly happy Agile world? So in my opinion, it would go something like this. Here you go, vendor, I've got about $3 million budget. Can you please, I want to achieve this. This is sort of my end goal. These are the key areas of my MVP. Now tell me, who would you put on a project team? What skills do they have? How have they delivered projects like this in the past? How are you going to collaborate with me as your customer? How will you make sure that you always deliver the greatest business value for that specific budget? And how are you going to adapt to change when it becomes necessary? So whilst we are seeing a bit of a trend, because Agile is obviously, a proven way of delivering projects, and even the digital transformation agencies promoting Scrum and Agile as a way to go. But why are we still asked for this detailed plan in the responses anyway? Why is that? So I think it's a bit like this. If you look at this maze and you think about this maze as your delivery project. So sure, I can ask you as a customer and I can go, vendor, can you get through this maze? And the vendor will say, yes, I can get through this maze. I've done it many times. I've got good people on this team. We've got the skills. It's going to be all right. We can do this. But then as a customer, you often don't have the chance to, during the RFQ process, really engage with your potential vendors. You might not know them yet. You know, you basically give them a document, and then you hope that they really understand what it is that you're wanting to do. But you know, obviously, it's a matter of trust. Can you really, just by somebody saying, I can do this, can you really know and have the confidence to do that? So I think this is why they're going back to tell us exactly how you're going to do it, because by doing that, you are showing that you actually have those skills that you say you have, and you know how to get through this maze. You know, you're telling them I'm going straight, left, right, left, right, and then the customer goes, oh, yeah, that all makes sense. I trust that you actually, you know, you're going to be able to deliver this project. So I think it's partly that they want to have that confidence. And then, of course, there are historically grown processes over time. Like, you know, this is how it's always been, and it takes time to transition, obviously, into change that. So, long story short, I think for a while yet, we'll be giving all these detailed plans and RFQ responses. Now, how do we still benefit from Agile? How can we actually still then go and run this project Agile? Well, start it off right, and start it off right during your RFQ response. So, during your RFQ response, when you're doing estimates, state your assumptions. Make sure that you actually document what your estimates are based on. Because then, of course, you know, if some of these assumptions don't hold true, then at least you can work with that and you can talk to the customer about that. But also show your confidence levels in your estimates. So we all do estimates to sort of arrive at this cost that we're putting forward. But if you can indicate that on a specific item you're not as sure about that estimate, and you can also factor in that risk into your estimate, then you again have a better conversation with the customer moving forward once you're in the project. So to give you an example, I have literally read RFQs where it says, we want a blog. And it's like, okay, it can be just about anything. We want a forum. Like, you know, at that point, it's very hard to estimate these things. So, you know, just say that in this, my estimate, my confidence level is lower. I've added in some risk, and hence my estimate has gone up a bit, to factor that in. And then, very important, actually emphasize that while you are giving a plan and you're giving estimates, that you would still want to run this project Agile, and what the implications of that are. So basically educate during the RFQ process already, and put into your RFQ response why it is a good thing to run a project in an Agile way with, for example, Scrum or another Agile methodology. That it is then, it enables the customer to respond to change and ultimately deliver a better outcome. But that also means that, you know, you are not necessarily going to deliver exactly what you've put into that RFQ response. You're going to use that as a guide, and you're always going to refer back to it, but you want to be open to possibly take a better avenue when it comes your way. And then, of course, ensure that the entire project team is on board. You really, as long as you still have somebody who doesn't agree with this process, doesn't agree with this methodology, you're going to run into trouble, because there's always going to be somebody who just says, but that's not what was in the response, that's not what was in the plan. And, you know, unless everybody feels like Agile is the way to go, you're not going to have fun. So if you have somebody particularly amongst the key stakeholders who's not fully on board, you might actually consider not running the project Agile, because then it's just not going to work, basically. But of course, you want to try to educate them so that they are just on board as you are. All right. Once you're in the project, make sure you validate your assumptions really early on. So, as you're starting to learn more about the project, you can then go back and be like, hey, we made this assumption in our FQ response. That is now not correct. Now, how do we respond to that? And how do we respond to that together? And what does that mean for the overall project scope? Also, re-educate the customer. So just because you might have had a little, maybe like a bit of a Agile SCRUM session in the beginning of the project, it doesn't mean that sticks. I can promise you, you're going to start making changes, you're going to adapt because great opportunities come along. But as soon as you then say, hey customer, we've given a lot more love to this section, now it means we're going to have to give a little less love to that section. That's usually when the difficult conversations happen. So as long as you kind of throughout your project always emphasize the benefits and implications of Agile, I think it's going to be okay, but it's important. And one way to do that is by obviously reporting and doing very regular reporting, ideally at least every sprint, if you can every week, where you basically always include the impact of change. So yes, change is a good thing, but nobody wants to just run wild and not know where that train is now going because you have made these changes. The customer obviously still wants to know they're on track to achieve their overall goal. So make sure you show a clear burn down of hours so that it also is very visible. If here's your MVP and you're running through the hours but you're not really getting there, then you need to let the customer know that that's a risk. So flag those risks early and have these difficult conversations early on. So it is actually really fun to respond to change. Suddenly the customer goes, we have this great idea, we want to make this map app really, really funky and cool, and you're like, yes, I'm on board, that sounds amazing. But you need to make sure you're not completely running off track and in the end you don't have a project, you don't have an end product to deliver, you don't have an MVP in the end because you've gone really crazy somewhere else. So keep yourself and the customer focused on the MVP and on the priorities, and just stay transparent in that way so the customer still knows where they're going. And then of course keep emphasizing that you are indeed delivering to a fixed budget, not a fixed scope, but a controlled scope. All right. So, here are some of the key lessons that I have learned. Always stay true to Agile. Don't Agile. Don't do something in between. It just usually isn't good. I've been in a situation where I've gone through my discovery phase, and it was like a 2-week discovery, just sort of getting an initial backlog going, and it was all fine. And then the customer asked me to now tell them what's in scope. And I was enthusiastic. I wanted to have a happy customer. The board really needed to know. So what I did is essentially tell all the developers on the team to quickly estimate my backlog. And the developers did not have the allocation that week because we were just going to have a planning session, right? Get the first sprint going. I didn't do proper planning pokers. We made a lot of assumptions, and a lot of these didn't end up holding true. So in the end, I ended up having, basically I have committed to a fixed scope without really realizing it at the time, but I've basically at that point, very early on, before I even started the first sprint, I had actually committed myself to a fixed scope. And then for the rest of the project, it was almost impossible to really enjoy it because I was constantly justifying why something isn't exactly as I had said it was going to be, why that scope wasn't exactly like that. So yeah, it was a very hard lesson learned. So I recommend that if you come into a situation like that, you really do say either we do another much greater discovery, because then it is really waterfall what they're asking for, and then you need more time for the discovery. So you can do that, Or you're just going to have to push back and say, we can give you some relative estimation and we can give you some indication, but don't fix yourself down when you don't, when you really shouldn't be doing that at that point in the project. Keep educating on the benefits of Agile and being open to change. So I can't reiterate that enough. I think sometimes it can feel a little bit like you are deviating from the plan can feel uncomfortable to the customer, because it's sort of easy to hold on to something that's already on paper, it's already there, but then you're losing all the great stuff that Agile really gives us, all the benefits of being able to get some feedback from the end user, for example, do some user research, and suddenly you realize, hey, you know what, if we tweak this a little bit more, this is going to deliver greater value, far greater value for the customer. So yes, keep doing that and get true buy-in from all stakeholders. What I mean by that is, don't just have them nod a little bit and be like, yeah, Agile sounds great, it's a trend, it's fine. Like they really need to understand what that means for the project. And lastly, always be transparent. So that's where the regular reporting comes in. That's where, having very open conversations with the customer comes in, and just making sure that they always feel like, whilst we are not following a plan, we still have a plan. We're still going towards an outcome, and we know how we're getting there and what we're doing, and we're not just suddenly getting to the end and not having delivered key things that we wanted to deliver. So that's my experience. This is the time for questions. Thank you very much. Yes.
Microphone. Thank you very much. Question about your Agile and their Agile. So one of the second point on the last slide was about thank you. Educate on the benefit of Agile. So when you are submitting an RFQ, how do you explain, or how do you know that they understand if Agile is the same with yours? And at which point do you actually start educating? And how does it actually look like that education? Is it a session, a workshop?
So it's a combination actually. So there is a section in the RFQ response that actually already explains, what the methodology is, how we work, that we would propose, for example, to use SCRUM and exactly what that means. And also actually already outlines the benefits of working that way. But then I would really recommend, and we've done it where we've actually had a specific session before we even got started with the project, where we basically do almost like a Scrum session where we educate everybody who is involved in the project just on Agile and how it works and what Scrum means, and also having a product owner who's committed, or somebody who represents their business, and can actually sign off on stories, etc., etc. So it's a bit of both. Yes.
The one there was when you talk about getting buy-in from the stakeholders, and you said if you can't get the buy-in, then maybe not do the project Agile. I don't know the exact stat, but waterfall's got a tendency to fail anyway. At that point, I'm kind of thinking at that point it's almost worth just not going for the work, right?
To be honest, it's worth considering. Like I would say that if you feel like you're not going to deliver the project well, you can. It depends a bit on the project, right, and the size of it. But if you really feel like you can't deliver it well, I think it is worth considering whether you want to do it or not.
Okay. Well, another question too. You talked about giving feedback and the constant communication, which 100% makes sense. However, you mentioned the burn down chance as well. Now I was under the impression that burn down chance specifically got taken out of the Scrum guide because of the tendency for people, because you get that dip at the beginning of an Agile project where you're still sort of team storming and things go off track, and it tends to have the opposite effect of that. Your management, your stakeholders start kind of freak out because they get you off track when you're not.
It's true, but I think it's also, I guess it's also the truth. Like, I feel like you want to be forthcoming and truthful. So yes, it does. I have seen the same thing, because initially there's a lot of time that just goes and you don't really have much to show for it yet. But I still think to educate at that point is better than to hide it, and to just say, give us a couple of sprints, get going. We do have a plan, we know what we're doing, but this was always expected and factored in. Yes, I think one more.
You talk about the fixed scope and the control scope. So prior to go out in RFQ, how do you convince the stakeholder that a control scope is what they are paying for rather than a fixed scope?
Yeah, it does come back to this education process, and actually, we put it in bold really in our RFQ responses now, that we propose to work that way, and so they know that when they're signing up with us or when they're considering us, that they already know that this is the way we propose to go forward. And so, I think it's really key to making it very clear in your response, but then also, again, having that personal conversation as soon as you can to talk about why you want to work that way. And then, hopefully that will give them enough confidence to move forward in that Agile methodology. Does that make sense?
I mean, there's a cost involved in getting a fixed scope, but it's kind of difficult to gauge what's the cost involved in getting the RFQ for a control scope, so you wouldn't know what's the end product that you're going to be receiving.
It's not that you don't know. Yes, you do not know exactly what the end product is, but you obviously are still working towards an MVP. You're not starting off, wanting to go here and then you end up going there. You may get here and you might go this way as opposed to that way. Like, what I'm trying to say is you shouldn't think that Agile means that you can just deliver whatever you want in the end. You're still working towards a specific goal. And it's just, I guess, opening the customer up to the possibility that maybe not absolutely everything is going to be exactly like I pointed out here, but we're still going to get to that end goal in the end. All right. Thanks very much, everybody.